Walking out of Season 7, the developers capped the total damage bonus on the skill Bonestorm, meaning that with its total scaling, you can only increase it by a whopping 3 times multiplier. And with some changes to how snapshotting was no longer going to work with the rune word Zan, I basically called this build dead on arrival. Dead as doornails, dead as the skellies that we sacrifice. And I'm happy to report that 1, I was very slightly wrong, but only because 2, with a very interesting set of stats and very specific timing, you can still get Bonestorm to overpower 100% of the time over its entire duration. What that means is that you can very comfortably run a tier 80 pit. If you were to get better gear than mine and actually masterwork it and fully swap it over to all of overpower, you'd be able to very easily run tier 90 and probably not going that much higher. But that being said, a build being able to run tier 90 does mean I should probably cover it. So let's go ahead and talk about Overpower Bonestorm, something that at one point I wanted to call Druid Shadowstorm, and I'll share a little bit later why that nickname came about, and how you can build this yourself. Funnily enough, I actually think that one of the best applications of this build is not in pit pushing at all, it's not in bossing, it's actually just in speed farming, because with stacking enough overpower damage multipliers, generic damage multipliers, and very minimal gameplay other than just kind of walking forward and every once in a while teleporting, you can effectively no button play this build other than clicking Bonestorm every 20 seconds, and you will just kind of walk by and eliminate everything in tier 4 Helltide. You can bring this into the Undercity if you want to get a little bit sweaty. You can bring it into Infernal Hordes as well. It also has the ability to be able to stack on even more damage by playing more proactively, and that's where you'll be able to start clearing out the pit. But I was not wrong in initially saying that they had killed the Bonestorm build. Your ability to snapshot overpower was something that was one of the few things keeping it going, and then the previous damage scaling that it had would add on a whopping like 30 to 50 times damage multiplier. That's a lot of damage. Now, one of the issues with Bonestorm is that its titular unique item Lidless Wall actually doesn't overpower when your primary Bonestorm overpowers. So initially when I was trying to make this build work, I was just building full into crit, ignoring overpower entirely, and I was doing okay. I'll swap over to some footage of me doing this tier 75 on the crit version of the build, where every once in a while you would 3% of the time overpower on the primary Bonestorm, but all of your Lidless Wall Bonestorms will not overpower, but they still do a decent chunk of damage. Luckily, they fixed the bug where the additional Lidless Bonestorms would not gain Bonestorm deals double damage affix, so now they all do a respectable amount of damage. But as you can see, this is a bit of a struggle bus, and while we were able to get it done, there was no combination of boss powers or ridiculous items or mythics that was going to make this thing somehow palatable. I probably wasn't going to recommend some build that can kind of scrape through a tier 75 and didn't really bring anything else to the table. So that's when we returned to an oldie but a goodie in the form of the aspect Blood Boil. Blood Boil says a whole bunch of stuff, but the only thing that is important is it says that every 20 seconds, your next skill is guaranteed to overpower. And when Bonestorm overpowers from this, it overpowers for the entirety of the duration. That's right, we're back to overpower snapshotting. While this does not directly increase the damage, it's not an aspect that increases overpower damage, just being able to build into it at all unlocks a huge amount of damage multipliers, and we're back to running orange damage on every single build. If you're interested in trying out the build yourself, I'm going to have a build planner down below, not only in the pinned comment, but in the description. Go ahead and check that out. I'm going to have a pit push version of it, I'm going to have a speed farm version of it, and then I'm going to spend the rest of this video basically describing the mechanics as they are, so you can better understand how to pilot this. And the gear that I'm currently using is trash, because I built all of this gear thinking I was going to build into crit, but actually we need to be building into overpower. So I'm going to have distinctly different gear as far as like items in the affixes and tempers in that build planner, so please do not be confused. The items I'm going to show you here are just to rattle off the important things so you know what to look out for. Welcome to the mechanics section. We need to talk about Bonestorm itself. Bonestorm is a skill that actually has like a fairly long base duration for it, and you can further increase that with the utility temper of Bonestorm Duration. So Bonestorm Duration can go on to any of your legendary pieces of gear that can have a utility aspect, so that would be any of your armor pieces as well as your gloves and your amulet. You'd be able to put it onto any one of these that you want. And what you're looking for is a sweet spot where Bonestorm will have a duration of exactly 20 seconds. Now, don't worry so much about the cooldown of Bonestorm. We're going to be resetting that very quickly via rapid ossification in our skill tree, utilizing Bone Prison, and in addition to that, we'll just be naturally proccing Decrepify, kind of the normal kit and caboodle of a Necromancer build. but by having Bonestorm last exactly 20 seconds or as close to it as you can possibly get, you kind of can't mess up this build, because what you're waiting for is Blood Boil to proc. At the start of a pit, you're just going to kind of stand there for 20 seconds. You're going to see this buff on your icon, and you're going to click Bonestorm. If you have Bonestorm at exactly 20 seconds or close to it, as you can see I have 19.88 seconds, make sure that when Bonestorm goes down, you don't cast any other skills that can overpower. That's why Decompose is going to be so valuable here. And then cast Bonestorm again. This will make sure that you're always eating the overpower proc with Bonestorm and never messing up your rotation. Then you have anywhere between 20 seconds and your further duration of Bonestorm to be able to enjoy casting all of the rest of the skills. By overpowering on Bonestorm, we can build into everything that scales overpower damage further. Unlike other builds where they're also blood skills, so you'll get a little bit of additional bonus there, we just have the base overpower proc. We're also going to turn this into a darkness skill to gain even more scaling, but we'll talk about that in a second. But just right off the bat, something like Rathma's Vigor that just says you deal 120% increased overpower damage, you can obviously see why this is so powerful, when in comparison, Ossified Essence would only ever reach like at maximum, maybe 100% damage bonus, and that's with a ridiculous amount of maximum resource available to you. The bare minimum, Rathma's Vigor, just strictly better. And then lastly, by building into maximum life, we're able to gain a huge amount of additional overpower damage into our additive bucket, meaning that you don't really have to worry about getting this stat anywhere else. Like if I were to just take my character right now and just drink my flasks and everything, I have 17,575 maximum life. And if we were to pop into my handy dandy Necromancer damage calculator, which you can actually go check out in my Discord, the link is in the description, just join up there. If I were to put in that amount of maximum life, you can see that that's granting me a whopping 8,687 additive damage for free when you're fully fortified and when you overpower. Since we overpower 100% of the time, this alone is multiplying our damage by 86 times. And that's ignoring any other additive damage that we have. The only other mechanics that you need to understand about the Bonestorm is, again, lidless walls Bonestorms, while they will gain the double damage for Bonestorm deals double damage, they themselves cannot overpower. I've already reported this in as a bug because there are some unique effects which can overpower and other unique effects which cannot, but these do not overpower when yours does, and these also can't randomly overpower, nor do they overpower with the Zan rune word either. By adding on Ultimate Shadow here, we'll also add the Darkness skill tag to Bonestorm, and we'll make it do shadow damage. By turning into a darkness skill on our skill bar, Reaper's Pursuit is now stronger. We gain access to scaling through Gloom. We also gain access to scaling through Terror. So our build actually has a total of 5 different skill-based passives to be able to build into. We have Coalesce Blood, Gloom, Terror, Compound Fracture, and Avulsion, and technically speaking, also Reaper's Pursuit, so that's actually 6. But then we can use powerful glyphs like Abyssal. Abyssal will increase all of your non-physical damage. Since you now do shadow damage, all your damage is non-physical. So what that means is that we gain full access to crit, overpower, and vulnerable damage scaling. We get all non-physical damage scaling. We gain all darkness and all bone scaling. So this thing is hitting like an absolute truck. For survivability, we're using Shielding Storm as a great source of being able to generate barrier. All of your Bonestorms from Lidless Wall will be able to generate this as well. Obviously, you're going to want a Shroud of False Death. If you don't have Shroud of False Death, do not worry. Choose a legendary armor with Hardened Bones for even more survivability. The gloves are where we're going to fit on Ultimate Shadow. You also want to be getting, again, a Bonestorm duration temper somewhere. You can get up to 100% increased duration. And then we also want increased corpse tendril size. If we could get up to 100% on that as well, that would be massive. Being able to pull in more monsters simultaneously is a huge, massive increase in efficiency. I cannot stress enough just how valuable that is. We are using Blood Moon Breaches. Mostly the crit chance helps a little bit. The curse skills, technically speaking, save your life a little bit more often, but it's mostly just there for the 50% increased critical strike damage. Yes, if you crit and you overpower, you get access to this. It doesn't only scale your crit damage. I've made tons of videos about that. I also have a Diablo Academy video out there right now if you want to go check out my crit damage focused one, but do not be alarmed. This works if you crit. It doesn't only scale crit damage. Igni Zal here is going to grant us even more maximum life, because maximum life not only helps us to stay alive, but again, further increases our overpower damage. In fact, when I told you my original base life, you'd multiply this by another 20%. So we're gaining even more overpower damage that I just wasn't calculating before. Cursed Aura means that we don't need to be using Tamwat as a rune word, so we can use Zal instead to further increase our damage. Then more maximum life, more intelligence, and better movement speed. You would want to be using a one-handed mace. I was originally building into crit. Most important things here are intelligence, maximum life, and then lucky hit chance to be able to restore a primary resource. Then you want to be going with overpower damage or ultimate skill damage, whichever one is higher, and then chance for Bonestorm to deal double damage. Remember, you need to reach 100% in total, so every time that you cast Bonestorm, you will get the double damage proc. There's nothing worse than casting it on less than 100% chance and not getting that double damage over the entire length of the Bonestorm. That means that if you had a greater affix on only the chance for Bonestorm to deal double damage, if you Masterwork crit that twice, and then you get a perfect roll on your weapon and Masterwork that once, you'll be at 100%. Here's where I'm putting blood boiling to actually make the entirety of the engine work. The cool part about this build, and I know you're looking at my lidless wall and you're like, that's literally insane. And it is. But the cool part about this build is nobody's playing it. So this thing is dirt cheap. I have like 3 or 4 of these just sitting around because nobody would ever buy them, meaning that you'll be able to pick up something like this incredibly, incredibly cheap. My amulet is completely trash, but that being said, one more roll of lucky hit chance to be able to restore a resource means you get pretty close to 100% total bonus returned back. If you want to put that onto another ring as well, because these are actually just my blood spear rings, you'd be able to get up to 100% of it, which is really nice. Here's where we're putting sacrificial. The other great part of ultimate shadow is that that means that we can use reapers for shadow damage, we can use bone mages for overpower damage, and we can use golem for crit damage, meaning we're getting the trifecta bonus out of sacrificial. It is an insane increase in damage. For your last 2 aspects, we get to use Damned since we're using shadow damage, and then we get to use Grasping Veins like I spoke about earlier. You would like some additional maximum life, additional intelligence here, then either attack speed or crit chance, whatever you need. Yes, attack speed is nice. It allows you to spam all of your other skills faster, which oddly enough makes your build overall more efficient. And then while I currently have rapid ossification here, you do not really need that. It does help out a little bit, so feel free to do that, but you'd probably want to put ultimate skill cooldown instead. I'm not going to bore you to death with the skill tree and the Paragon. You're going to check the planner for that, but just remember when you're looking through the skill tree, we are a darkness skill build, so that's why we're building into a lot of those things, and we're trying to put as many darkness skills onto our skill bar as possible. The boss powers is where this build starts to get kind of interesting. First, we're using Lord Seer's Pool because this has a ridiculous amount of lucky hit chance that triggers on the target. If that's a bug, who knows? Either way, it's going to help you to vastly increase how often you're able to proc Cax, which is by far one of the largest damage killers that you have available to you. Harbingers is interesting because casting a basic skill will eat all of your resource and make everything around you vulnerable, but you will deal 30% increased vulnerable damage. The great thing about this is that just by triggering off Decompose, you can basically on demand choose to make everything around you vulnerable just in case Bone Prison is off cooldown. Or in the speed farm version of this, you just run by, cast Decompose one time, everything is vulnerable, you get that damage value. But because this isn't a core skill build, we're able to basically spam this whenever we want, since we will have all the resource that we need once Cax is trying to proc. Cinderas just grants a huge amount of elemental damage, which we are doing darkness damage, so we get to gain access to this. And then depending on what your gear looks like, you could be using something like Hatred's Embrace to be able to fix your crit chance, but if you don't need that, you do have a couple different options. So things like Belial's is kind of interesting. You don't break stealth until you would either take damage or you would attack. So you do get to have this bonus up for 2 seconds after triggering your boss power. What that means is that you can kind of run around dealing damage with Bonestorm. As long as you don't get hit, you continue to enjoy the benefit. Other simpler options would just be Flesh Reapers for additional vulnerable damage. This would require you to temper on crowd control duration onto your amulet instead. Just remember that when you need that damage bonus. You could be using something like Blackmailer's Sabotage, especially if you swap over the build to using Air of Perdition on your helmet. You can't really fit in Shielding Storm. Blackmailer's Sabotage allows you to generate a huge amount of barrier for generating Fortify, and we generate Fortify all the time. Now, considering the fact that this build could realistically reach about pit tier 90 on like super endgame gear, I still don't think that we're really going to be covering it on max roll at this time. That being said, as long as the build continues to work, I'll continue to cover it season to season via build guides and updating this planner. But it is a cool thing that you can do. It's a very sleeper build for speed farming and open world content. Very easy to run. Once you get the hang of it, incredibly easy to pilot. It's not like Druid where you need to go snapshot 18 things. You legit just cast your ultimate once every 20 seconds and it's kind of hard to screw up. It's an interesting build. It's something you could try out. Again, check the planner down below. If you're brand new here and you're excited about the idea of finally trying Bonestorm, let me know what you think. I would love to hear from anybody trying to optimize this build. So just remember, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, leave a like on it and leave a comment down below. Do you have any other questions, comments, ideas, concerns? Do you have any other issues, running into cool bugs or different mechanics or something you think that people aren't trying out? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you very, very much for watching this video. I truly hope that it helps, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.